Ankur, I want to jump right in here to this conversation you had with Casey Jourdan. What a tale of heroism.
Yeah, I mean, it's so different than so many of the other interviews we've done. And kind of like interfacing with that traditional concept of like, oh, the person went to war and is a war hero. And it's like, we don't have many heroes on the show like that. And so it's kind of this interesting intersection of the traditional narrative with what she's doing, which is totally not traditional.
And I think she's representing a worldview or embodying a worldview that is not typical of that experience. I mean, she even points to it, right? When she's talking about her Twitter feed, the algorithm's like feeding her all this like ultra conservative right wing just because she's a veteran. But this is a veteran with, you know, more integral worldview, kind of a more open, like so much of her work and so much the way she's applying herself, you wouldn't expect from a law enforcement officer or someone that served in Iraq.
Yeah, I mean, the whole first part of it where she's like, my mission in high school, I knew my purpose and it was to make people laugh. So that's why I went into law enforcement in the military. And I was like, whoa, I never connected those two. And the fact that she connected those was amazing for me. It's like,
right. Like your surprise was audible.
Yeah. And it's still alive in me, right?
I became a cop because I wanted to help people not do drugs. And you're like, what? It's not because you wanted to like abuse power and force your will, impose your will on other human beings? Wow.
Yeah, it was beautiful. Beautiful for me to hear.
So it's good. It's good for, I mean, it's good for us too, to like hear these other stories. It's part of the point of doing this podcast. Well, I'll tell you, I think for me, I know my job here is to like extract something. And I think I did. I'm looking forward to the follow-up. Am I right that your intention is to have a follow-up where you're going to go into these Casey Jourdan's 8 rules of life? Is it worth mentioning them here? We'll do that. We'll come back and get them when you...
Yeah, I think we're going to do a whole episode on those.
We're going to do a whole episode, and then we'll do a debrief on that episode too.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. So I just want to start with, I think, for me, what's... taking Casey as an example of someone, I've never been through anything like that. I've never been in a war zone.
Yeah.
I don't have like a way to relate to that level of distress. But I have my own stress in relationships and work. And I think one thing that was really encouraging or inspiring about Casey's journey is the way she took responsibility for her state and recovery. And I think that's something, I don't know that I can formulate an actual kind of in the spirit of what we're trying out this season, a specific test to run about it. But I am aware of this in my relationship where I just kind of I'm triggered. I'm in a state, and I know that anything I say after that is only going to make things worse.
Okay, I've been there. Yeah.
I know that. It doesn't stop me from doing it. I will often be looking down the barrel of the gun. I don't know how to work that metaphor because somehow the gun is me pointing at myself, knowing that whatever behavior comes out of this state is going to just send things downhill. And so many of these things, I don't know if there's a specific moment in the conversation, but so much of what Casey's talking about reflected such an understanding of herself, the way she's wired, and how her reactions will unfold from a certain state, that it did give me this inspiration to kind of set that as the mark for myself. So maybe when we circle back to this conversation, I'll have some more specifics about that, and maybe put something concrete together for me to try after that conversation. But for right now, I'm just being inspired by the fact that if she can do it, I can do it. When my wife didn't buy coffee or something, if she can like recover from this moment, I think was really poignant was like the wedding and the fireworks, where she knows it's coming. She's been warned, and yet when she hears that, it's just instantaneous and it's so visceral and it's so immediate. So that's what I'm going to walk away from this conversation. I'm wondering if you took anything similar away.
Well, I would love to just kind of piggyback on that a little bit, because there's a couple parts of that I think are both really attainable and really impressive. And so I just kind of want to break that down, that she's done a lot of the hard work of understanding how she's going to predictably react. You can't control it. It's not like she's this enlightened person that doesn't have reactions or can automatically, like in your example of being in the argument with your partner, knowing that anything you say is going to make things worse. I don't think she's representing the pole of never saying those things, but just knowing that, okay, I'm probably going to say something that's going to make things worse. And then having the clarity of communication with the people around her, or the partner in this example, to be like, hey, I may say something that's going to make things worse. Help me out here. Like, here's the user manual. We turn to page 15 of the user manual for Nathan Ramos or Casey Jourdan or Ankur Shah. And this is what to do in this situation. And that clarity, I think is it's almost like this acceptance of our lack of perfection and lack of enlightenment that allows us to be like, all right, I'm going to blow this pretty soon here. And this is how we can help each other recover from what's going to happen.
What an incredible permission. And I think this is something that is actually pretty fundamental to her orientation, to her worldview, because it's not, maybe it's the difference between striving for enlightenment or being this kind of spiritually like complete being. And what she's saying is this commitment to evolution, right? So like the change is going to happen, the stress or the stressor it's going to happen, like that you can count on. But then our choice about how we respond and what it means to us is kind of what either opens us to a path of evolution or.
Yeah, no, it really resonates with these other interviews we've done with meditators, like with Leigh Brasington or the farmers from Quebec who are really into meditation. It's all about, like, maybe another way of saying it is, rather than this kind of like air element of enlightenment and like, ooh, hanging out in perfection, it's really grounded in this, like, the earth of self-acceptance. And like her 8 rules to me many of them are just flavors of like, this is what self-acceptance looks like. You know, like the boundaries or the owning our story. They're all like, if we really can accept where we are at this moment in our history and our trauma and our attitudes and all of that imperfection that's part of it, this is how life would look like.
Well, I think what's so cool about finding someone like this and giving them a space to tell their story, it's like, you know, that all the interventions, all the tools that she's cultivated and created were sort of forged in this fire of this experience. It's so extreme, right? So, you know, she's like crafted these jewels out of so much suffering and pain, and like you can see it's like it's necessary. Like for her, like you and I can kind of like, there's like there's like a little casual, like, I could just totally lose it here, but I know my wife will forgive me. And, you know, it's not the best, it's not the most oriented to human evolution, but do I really need to evolve today? I can evolve later. She didn't have a choice. It was like evolve or die. And it just feels like the tools that came out of that have such urgency and such solidity. Like she had to know her story. She like had to know her story, not in like some abstract sense, but she had to like really develop the sensitivity, knowledge of herself in order to tell her partner, I need to be hugged this way when I'm in this state. And I this is what you need. Here's what you said, like, here's the user's manual. And it's really important because you can break it. You know what I mean? And like having that level of having those stakes, I guess, you know, does that resonate with you? And
oh, totally. And I guess that's one of that's kind of how growth often works. You know, that necessity is the mother of invention, personal growth, or even societally. Like we're going to try and find a way out of all these crazy, what's the word? These existential threats that we've created for ourselves as a society. We're only going to figure that out if we figure it out just when we're right up against the wall. You know, it's not like when people are talking about climate change 50 years ago, it was like, oh yeah, that should be important.
if this is going to get too philosophical, but I am curious, right? Because this is a major issue. Like so many of these things that you like say are like existential risks, are like these long tail kind of like people like where is climate change, for most of us? Like I wake up, weather's pretty good. I'm having a pretty good day. Like there's no like I don't see existential risk on the horizon. How do you let me just like put it at you, like you woke up today, a beautiful family, you baked some bread, you're looking out your window, beautiful mountain range, it's a beautiful day out, I can see the sun streaming in through the window. How from this place of pretty good do we summon the stakes or the commitment or that level of urgency to actually evolve or want to evolve?
Very difficult.
Very hard. Get back to me later.
Very, very hard. No, I mean, even just like, so, for Momentum Lab, we'll do these calls, people who are interested in the program, talk to them. Like, yeah, tell me about your life, this, that. And one of the key things is if the person is not feeling just a ton of pain and the sense that like, you know what, this can't go on. Like, I can't deal with this anymore. Then they're really not a good candidate for a coaching program. Right? Because they're adults. They got all kinds of things going on. Like even if they like choose to enroll, actually having the time and the dedication to privilege this kind of work when you could be doing so many other things, you've got to have the pain, which is why I think it's first of all really exceptional for all of the activists who are working on this that they keep motivated when they don't have to be. Like that to me it's like a higher level of being in touch and higher level of consciousness. And it's like not something I think we can expect of people who are at the same time like in like their material comfort zone and like really busy with just their normal lives. It's very difficult to expect that. So I mean, to answer your question,
You don't know.
I don't know.
I have no fucking idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I would just say like I would counter slightly to say that like pain is one, a bother, something that say like this situation cannot stay the same. I'm really driven to change it. And maybe it's a similar flavor, but slightly different, which would be a longing for something, for some creative manifestation, some goal, something that maybe it's not, it's drawing you towards it rather than kind of chasing you away from it. Either way, the stakes are high.
Yeah. And that I've seen too. And in fact, I've felt that for years where I was just really not feeling fulfilled or comfortable with the work I was doing because it just wasn't, I knew I had much more, I don't know if more is the right word. I had a very different potential that was not being tapped. And it was just, it was physically uncomfortable. I know you love the body. You love the fact that we have bodies. So either way, whether it's the pain or like that sense of possibility pushing us forward, there's this physical sense of like, something is not right.
Yeah, it's interesting. It reminds me a couple of things that both what Casey said and something you just said remind me of the work of Dr. Moshe Feldenkrais. You just mentioned the body. One is in one of her 8 rules, and we'll circle back to it. But she does say something about using your strength to balance out your weakness. This is just like one of the fundamental sort of presuppositions of the Feldenkrais method. Using your strength. And the other thing that's really kind of coming out to me now, based on this conversation, is he loved to work with people in great duress, traumatic brain injury, birth defect, anything like that, really strong challenges that he could help them overcome. And he liked to work with people that were at the very edge of their field, concert cellist, or an actor or a dancer or something that actually was driven. So it's like, again, there's like sort of these two states where you're really driven to pay attention, and the dangerous part is kind of in the middle where you're like, yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I think that's the definition of it. I think is pretty good.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's like, yeah, it's not great, but It's good. And it's interesting. Another thing, if I can you just stop me. We'll cut it out if it's relevant or not interesting. But I think that's if you follow that more in terms of the Feldenkrais teaching, is that then you're driven to make finer distinctions, to be very specific about something, to be very clear and develop a sensitivity. And so I can really relate that to what Casey did, right? We're in the middle. You don't have to define really anything. Everything's just kind of a wash. It's just general. It's pretty good. Pretty good. Just kind of like this kind of fuzzy color you paint it all with. It's not great. It's not horrible. But when you're really, really in pain, you're really pressed to really get a sense of what that, be it physical pain or emotional pain. And when you're really compelled by a vision, or, I'm thinking some of our musician friends, like the obsession over the tone becomes so important.
Yeah. We have this almost infinite capacity for attention and detail that is just so seldom invoked, and like in the work of Daniel Kahneman, the idea is that through evolution, we've evolved not to invoke it the majority of the time because it takes such energy. And normally, like, I'm going on a hike, I'm just walking around, and all I'm really aware of is like, no mountain line, tree, no mountain line. But then you get to like one tree that's just really enormous and it's covered with all kinds of moss and lichen, all this crazy stuff. And then you can flip into that other sense of attention because it's so extraordinary, and be like, oh, this is an infinitely complex visual experience. And I'm gonna go into it with all of that detail. And I can see all the individual tendrils of the lichen coming out. And and then you're just like, oh, okay, this is amazing, and then you just keep walking and you're like, okay, no mountain line, tree, like no twisting your ankle. We have this capacity for attention when we want to use it, like, and only the person who's passionate about music is going to go into like that depth of, okay, that tone, I want it to be slightly different in a way that we don't even have words for in English. So if you read descriptions of these like guitar pedals, they're just like psychedelic ramblings because we don't have words for what these tones actually sound like. It's the same with that level of detail is just beyond what we choose to experience most of the time, but it's available.
It's available. We're not inclined.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering. I love that this is part one of our debrief, which this is the debrief of part one of this conversation, and I do think that we're going both through your conversation with her in kind of detailing her practice or these rules of life, and we come back. I would really like to discover this and offer this to the listener, some way to build that into your life as a practice, assuming there's some type of entropy towards habitual kind of complacency, towards just blah. And that high definition specificity, fascination, or in the case of, pain or duress, it's very rare. It's very rare. And I wonder, like, how could we pull this out and kind of offer this for ourselves? Actually, I'm curious, like, what would that look like for me to cultivate that? I guess one is getting very clear about what I want and sort of stimulate it from that end. And there would be then the other side too, right? Like being very clear about what's unacceptable about my life, any situation that I might find myself in that I've kind of grown complacent.
Yeah, I think those are good hints. One is getting in touch with what you want, or kind of like the soul's longing, in a poetic way of saying it. And the other, Saudashi, yeah. And the other way is to stop if we are anesthetizing. I think a lot of people are in this kind of deep pain that we just have all these techniques for not actually experiencing or paying attention to. So that's another opportunity there, is to take your foot off the brake.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. That's subtle and very interesting, maybe not obvious. So I think I said something about getting in touch with the pain on the other side and allowing that to kind of be. So there's the longing and then there's the pain. But you said something interesting there, which is to identify the places where you're actually numbing. reducing your sensation to deal with that pain, and to actually start by stopping.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of pain. When people are mean, it's an expression of the fact that they have experienced pain. It's unhealed. And so we're like just kind of conducting it along, passing it out, sharing it. And so to me, given how many people exhibit that behavior, that tells me that there's just a lot of pain out there. And a lot of what we've developed, not just this society, but historically, as humans, is ways of dealing with that pain. And there's like chemical ways, and there's entertainment ways, and there's just suppressing it and like kind of burying emotions ways that we all do these to various degrees, and they're useful and healthy to various degrees. But the downside is they prevent us from having access to that level of kind of presence and detail and attention that you're talking about.
Yeah, and it feels necessary to acknowledge, kind of our lack of expertise in this realm, and that we're talking at a very kind of high philosophical level on one hand, and coming up with these sort of practical ideas on another, but also to kind of acknowledge that it's so individual. Someone like Casey, or someone that's dealing with really complex trauma from their childhood or some horrible event, or just chronic, debilitating physical pain, that there's a very real need to dull that sometimes, or to diminish it, or to bring it into something that's manageable. And I just want to acknowledge that, but also acknowledge the complexity kind of in the nuance of just our understanding of that culturally. You have this whole opioid crisis, right? And at the same time, I'd say we also have just kind of a crisis of attention, an addiction to social media, and to kind of just eating unconsciously and just being unconscious. I said those are probably the predominant ways of numbing out in my experience. For me, just like reaching for a snack, scrolling kind of mindlessly, but just like taking these opportunities to just not be aware, not be conscious.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Okay, so maybe we just leave it here, because I think we're going to go deeper.
Yeah,
for sure. That's our guarantee.
Yeah. So Casey and I have continued the conversation. We'll release that soon, and then you and I will. Once that's released, you and I will continue this, and it'll be this like parallel stream.
I'm on the edge of my seat. I love a cliffhanger.
I'll try and do more.
Yeah. Oh, good. Maybe we can set up like a big like season 3 kind of like mystery or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I want to do more of what people love. You're a person. I want to do more of what you love.
Infallible logic. Love it. All right. Hey, thank you all so much for listening to this conversation. I hope you are able to take something right away in this conversation and apply it, or at least be aware of some of these dynamics in your life. But stay tuned for part 2 of this conversation, where we will most certainly extract something very concrete, and I will, as my part demands on this show, commit to some crazy experiment to apply it to my life. Thank you all so much. We'll talk to you next time.